Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, I'm Marcus Williams, and I'm here with co-host Brock Morris, and today we have special guest author JC C. Wade. JC is an American author who currently lives in Northern Virginia with her husband, 3 sons, and 2 cats. Married to a military man, she has had the great opportunity to move often and fall in love with people of all walks of life. Her works merge multiple genres, featuring elements of historical fiction, romance, fantasy, and adventure. She has been a public educator, specifically a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing most of her career, but has dabbled in creative writing her entire life. Outside of writing, JC also enjoys gardening, painting, kayaking, and spending quality time with her family. Welcome, JC. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we jump into getting to know you, we've got to go over your 2 truths and a lie, and I'll remind our audience with this is scorekeeper Steve. And I had an opportunity last week because I did an interview myself to catch up, and of course I did not. So we're still stuck at Brock 9 and Marcus 5. So let's go through them, and maybe today I'll finally start my much anticipated comeback.
Maybe.
Okay, number 1. I was once interviewed by a local television network in full Harry Potter cosplay. Number 2, my to-be-read pile is rounding the 200s. And number 3, I was roped into becoming a Washington, D.C. Fox 5 GTV news anchor for a year in an effort to promote my books. So, interview in Harry Potter cosplay, to-be-read pile up around the 200s, or roped into becoming a news anchor for a year on Fox 5. All right, we'll see if we can figure those out as we go. Why don't we start by just telling us how you said you've dabbled in creative writing your entire life. How did that turn into a decision that you're actually going to write a series of books?
Well, it's kind of divine intervention in a way. So years ago, my husband, when Obama was president, he lost his job in the Army. Basically, he was full-time Army National Guardsman. But the camp that he was working at, Camp Shelby in Mississippi, was shut down. So we were without a job, and I was a teacher, and we had 2 little babies, and we didn't know what to do. So I was doing everything that I could to supplement our income. I was teaching. I was doing preschool during the evenings for parents. I was teaching painting classes on Wednesday nights to adolescents, anything that I could do. And then one night, I woke up and the Spirit told me that I am forgetting a talent that Heavenly Father's blessed me with. And I was told to write a book. And I thought, well, I can do that. Like, sure, it should be easy, right?
Right.
Fast forward 5 years later. It was not as easy as I thought. I had no idea really how to write a book. Yes, I took creative writing classes in college, and I did a bunch of stuff to like fan fiction and just dabbled, and I would send stories to my friends and my parents, and they loved them. They were fun, but I'd never sat down from start to finish to write a book, especially one as densely like historical. Like I wrote historical fiction. So much research was involved that I had no idea really what I was doing. I thought, sure, I'll write historical fiction. That'll be easy, right? I can just do some research. Easy topic, right? It turned out to be way harder than I thought. But it worked out.
Cool. So where did you get the idea for the story then?
Well, we all have our likes and dislikes, right? So I really like action adventure. I like high stakes fiction. And so I immediately thought about what kind of period in history am I drawn to? And historically, my family, my ancestors came from Scotland. My great grandfather came over here with his brothers, and they would break ponies for the Pony Express, and they would break wild horses and Anyway, they lived in Wyoming and Idaho. And so I have like a strong connection and history to Scotland. And there's something really endearing about Scotland. They've been like brought to their knees so many times and they just don't give up. They're just really tenacious and I love them for that. So I knew I wanted to set it in Scotland. And I also loved their history of their wars that have lasted for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I had read a couple books based on those different time periods of wars and things like that, historical fiction. I enjoy historical fiction. And there's nothing more high stakes than your life is on the line, right? So I thought, okay, I'm just going to choose one of the wars.
Uh-huh.
And we'll go from there. And so I chose the first wars of Scottish history, or Scottish independence, excuse me. So set during like the 1300s. I'm sorry, the 13th century, 1296, 1297, around there, when King
Yeah.
Edward sacks Berwick and takes Scotland for his own. So there's nothing more high stakes than that.
Yeah. Cool. And funny enough, before this podcast was even an idea, I actually read your prequel and book number 1 in your series, and I happened to be driving through Carlisle up into Scotland at the time I was listening, which
That
is
so
where
cool.
where your book takes place. So I think it gave it like it brought it to life even more because I was actually there when I was reading it. So it was really cool.
That is cool.
But so have you had a chance to do any book research or travel to Scotland as part of your writing?
I haven't been able to travel to Scotland yet. My husband keeps promising me that he'll take me. But things keep happening. Our basement flooded. Things just keep happening. So it keeps getting postponed. That's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
All of my research came from books. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually have some relatives over there and I would talk to them and ask them. At the beginning of the book, there's a conversation between two servants and their dialect is very strange. And my distant cousin over there helped me write it. She said, because I had written it in a different way. And she says, no, you sound like somebody from the South, like where my husband lives. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is how they would say it. And I was like, okay. So to me, it sounds so strange, but she helped me with that. So that was cool. Having connections.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So in this journey, is there something like your present self advice you would give, you wish you would have known starting out that would have helped?
Oh, so much. So much. So I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I wrote the end and I didn't know what to do at that point. I didn't know how to query an agent. I didn't know how to get an editor. I knew nothing. So I went online and I shopped. I just typed in, I've written a book, now what? And if I could go back, I would tell myself to just be patient and wait and not pull the trigger too fast, because I ended up signing with a hybrid publisher, which wasn't good. It doesn't matter who I signed with. I'm not going to say, but they were not helpful. I paid them, to me, exorbitant amount of money. So now that I'm an indie author, the amount of money I paid them for copy editing was ridiculous. The cover art was terrible. I had to go outside and pay somebody else, an artist I found, to do The White Witch's Daughter. Oh, she's done all of my cover art since then. But the cover artist there was, it just looked like something done in like print shop. Like it was so poor. And I paid $600 for that. And then, all these things that they nickeled and dimed me for, and I didn't know any better. And then after it was published, and it did really well, surprisingly well for a first book. And they were taking like 60% of my royalties. And I was like, what am I paying you for? So after a year with them, my contract ended and they asked me to re-up my contract. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to do everything on my own. So I wish I could go back and just tell myself, just wait, do research research some more. There's no rush. There's no hurry. And learn how to do it yourself, because it was so much cheaper.
Yeah. That sounds a lot. Would you consider them a vanity press?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And
Okay.
I didn't stay away from those. If you have to pay, I thought it was like one-stop shopping, right? So like I can go to one place and they'll do all of these wonderful things for me that I don't know how to do. And it sold me. I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. No, it wasn't. It was not exactly what I needed. So beware
Yeah.
of vanity presses.
Yeah. And for people who aren't aware, essentially they, the traditional publishing model is the publisher pays you and then does all the work. Then the vanity model is you pay them and then they still take royalties. And then there is an in between that I think is kind of emerging. And I don't know if you have any experience with this, but where they'll basically do a lot of work for you, but then it's your book, you own the rights, you own the royalties and everything. And that's kind of an in-between version. So
Hmm.
it's,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have researched
because
that. My uncle wrote a book, and he looked at, and I warned him against vanity presses, and I was like, "Don't do what I did." And then he signed with one, and it seems a lot better than the one I signed up with because basically they just did some things and they just kind of washed their hands of it and said, "Okay, it's yours," which is nice. And it was a
yeah,
lot less expensive too for him.
right. And I mean, because even when you're self-publishing or indie publishing, you're still paying for your editor and your cover design. So it still costs money. So it's more of a, do you want a place where you go and get it all in one place, or do you want to have to go out and find all the different contractors yourself and all that? But I had this, luckily I didn't pull the trigger, but same thing. And the vanity presses, they make you feel good because they say, we've reviewed it and we accept your book. So you feel like it's a real publisher saying, we like your book and we want to move forward, when really they accept almost every book, anyone willing to pay them.
Right? You feel like a pat on the back, right? Like I made it. They like it. They love it. No, they love your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have the rest of your books all been then indie published or self-published since that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. White Witch's Daughter, I republished it. That's my first book. I republished it as a second edition. And then The Conjuring of Valor, A Storm Summoned, and Winter's Handmaiden have all been indie published.
So Winter's Handmaiden, was that just recently released?
Yes, it was released in April of this year. So, and I've been overwhelmed with the response. It's been really nice because, when you're a debut author, your debut book, it's crickets. Nobody knows who you are and people don't really want to take a chance. And I worked really hard with marketing for the first 2 years and I got a little bit of a following, right? I went through my newsletter and things. It's been really helpful doing that. It was slow growing, and using
Mm-hmm.
social media constantly every day to try to promote yourself is tiring, but it does pay off in the end. I've been a slow grower, which is fine with me because I want
Yeah.
real people. I want my real fans, right? I don't want just anybody just joining because.
Right.
So Winter's Handmaiden has had a overwhelming response for me just because I think of the legwork that I've done for the last 2 years trying to get my name out there, which is hard.
Yeah. What have you found to be the most successful avenue of marketing?
Well, marketing marketing is hard. The most successful way to market is to write to market. So it's kind of like people know what they like, and these same stories have kind of been, and tropes have been told over and over and over again. Stranger comes to town, there's a problem, and people love that. They don't want to let go of that. So writing something that's for you and that you love doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to tank and it's not going to do well, but you're more likely to do well with the marketing you do if you write to market. So whatever you write, you need to do a lot of research and figure out the tropes of that genre that people expect, and
Mm-hmm.
you brand to that, because otherwise marketing is just like an uphill battle and you're beating your head against the wall because nobody really wants something that's out of the box. I mean, they say they do, but they really don't. They like comfort. They like the
Right.
same story told over and over again in different ways, of course. but
Yeah.
people expect certain things.
Do you feel like that's somehow inhibiting or holding back your creativity when you're writing to tropes or writing to market?
At first I did, but now not so much. That doesn't necessarily mean writing to market doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a rubric and you have to fill these certain things, meet these certain requirements. I still feel
Yeah.
like my story is my own story. Like Winter's Handmaiden, for instance, it's a retake on Hades and Persephone. It's
Hmm.
told through a lens of Celtic mythology, and it's the same story of Hades and Persephone, but it is not at all what every other book about Hades and Persephone is about. So
Right.
it's a totally new twist. It's about the worth of a soul and overcoming obstacles and enduring to the end, and that life doesn't end. And, it's the weight of our experiences and how they carry us and how we need to forgive ourselves and let go. Every person who's read it thinks that it's going to be this, initially thinks it's going to be this spicy tale of Hades and Persephone. And then when they read it, even people who were expecting that are leaving great reviews like, this is not what I expected. I'm so glad that I read this book. Highly recommend. So that's great praise. So while their same tropes of Hades and Persephone are in the book, it's a completely different take. So I was able to use my own ideas and creativity using that story, and it's still doing really well.
That's awesome. So, speaking of spice, at some point you decided to keep your books clean. And how did that decision happen for you, or was it natural, or how did that all come about?
Well, I thought a lot about this actually writing, because I write romance, and romance is like the number one seller in the world. People love romance. They love the
Hmm.
happy ending. They love the feelings that it evokes. And there's a reason that we like those things. That desire to be loved and love somebody else is divinely placed within us, right? So I knew adding romance to my stories was something that I wanted to do, not just for marketing sense, but like for my own. That's just something that I like. I like to read romance. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with intimacy between, and and within certain parameters, but I have read so many books where it's a great story and then you run into this spice that's like vomit. Like it's just so graphic, and that's not what I don't think that's really what readers want. At least most readers want the intimacy, and they want connection, and they want what real romance is. It's a different kind of love, different from the worldly love that we're all searching for, like what we aspire to in our marriages, in our relationships with our family. Like the intimacy, the level of intimacy, emotional intimacy was really important to me. So for instance, in The White Witch's Daughter, there is a love scene. It's very non-graphic. And to me, the most intimate part is after the sex happens that you don't really see. There is a really long conversation that the husband and the wife have together afterwards. And that to me is more intimate than the act, the conversation that they have, opening up, sharing their feelings, sharing their ideas. That was, to me, way more intimate and a representation of what a good relationship looks like than just sex for sex. So that's
Yeah.
what I wanted. I knew I wanted to add it, but I wanted to show what I feel like it should be.
Yeah.
And do you feel
Yeah, that makes
like
sense.
the market and your readers have responded in kind to that they've sort of embraced the fact that it doesn't have that, and that you're connecting more with the emotional intimacy components and all other aspects? Has that been the response you felt?
I have a few, I'm not huge, right? My name isn't everywhere. And maybe if I was writing spicy monster romance, I would have like 1 million sales a year, because there is a market for that and it's flying off the shelves. But that would not be true to who I am. And I don't feel like I'm called to bring out lust in people. I want to do something that makes my creator happy with me. And like he gave me a talent. I want to make him proud. right?
Hmm.
So there are people that have followed me that they are fans of me, and they said, I will read anything that she puts out, because I think because of that intimacy, level of intimacy versus just spice, just to have spice. Um, trying to find your true fans and your true tribe takes time, and I'm willing to wait, and I have found some. So it's motivating for me to keep going, because there are people out there like you and me who don't want all that other stuff, and they're happy just to read wholesome. Yes, sex is important. It's part of everybody's life. His desire for it is innate. It's put there for a reason, but it doesn't
Right.
have to be. It doesn't. We don't need to read a play-by-play, right?
Right. It's another lesson in that, being patient, right? Being patient as you're trying to write and publish. Also be patient, waiting for your audience and your market to find you and you to find them, and it will happen. So great lesson.
Yeah. So how do you let your readers know kind of your level of content and cleanliness in the books? How do you advertise that?
Usually it's best just to be really honest and upfront about it. So when I'm marketing and I'm making ads in Canva or wherever I'm going to make them, I will put, what can you expect from Winter's Handmaiden? What will you see in White Witch's Daughter? And I'll put an age range, like this is appropriate for a teen. This, I put fade to gray, sexual, which means like, maybe it's happening, but then the door closes, right? Fade to
Right.
black. I've also written fade to black. Some stories I have are fade to black, which means there's like kissing and then boop, the end. It's happening, but you don't hear anything about it.
Right.
Most of the things, there's like a spice level, like if you market on TikTok at all. I don't know if you use TikTok. If you're marketing on Book Talk, you put like peppers, and there's like out of 5, you can put how many peppers there is. Like mine's like half a pepper, right? Like, so I'll be like, no, like not spicy, non-spicy, clean romance in your hashtags. So it gets to the right people, because people are searching for that. And when you put those kind of things in your hashtags, or you put it on your ad itself, it helps. And a lot of time when I sell books in person, kids come up to my table because my cover art is really cool. At least I
Yeah.
think it draws the eye, and I have 5 books all by the same artist. So they're like, it's fantasy. It screams fantasy. So people come up, little kids, usually like preteens, and they say, oh, this looks really good. And their mom says, ooh, is it appropriate for them? Only one time did I have one person say, oh, it's not spicy, I don't want it. So that was just one time. And everybody else has been like, yeah, that sounds like a really good story. I don't really think that most people are in it for spice. I think most people want a good story. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I think you're absolutely right, but the perception is the opposite, especially, and because they fly off the shelves, but are they flying off the shelves because of that, or because they're searching for something like the intimacy, the deeper connection that they think they might find, but are not finding in those spicy books?
Right.
Yeah.
People want that level of intimacy. They want to create that in their mind or in their real lives. And people like to escape to books. I do. I love to escape into books, but I think you're right. When they are searching, they don't know what they're searching for. Maybe they don't realize that that's what they want, but and they're not finding it in the super spicy, crazy, paranormal romance
Yeah.
genre. I mean, nothing against them, but it's to each their own. But I feel like you said, they're flying off the shelves because I think that they're searching for something and they don't really know how to name it.
So how do we flip the script so that the clean books are the ones flying off the shelves? How do we make that happen?
I think we need to have more conversations like we're having now. And people need to review books. When people find books that are clean and good and they like touch something within them, like I'm not a big reviewer, and especially now that I'm an author, like I feel like I can't review because I don't want people might know that I'm an author if I leave a review, and they'll say, and they come back against me because, oh, don't read her books because she's a jerk. And so
Yeah.
I've just kind of stepped back from leaving reviews. But usually, if I loved a book, 5 stars, I'll go and review it.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like people need to be more explicit in what they loved about a book. And that's hard to do sometimes. Sometimes you, like, as a reader, you're like, I don't know what it was about this, but I just love these characters. The majority of the people that I have found have been in person, doing events in person, and they have told their friends about me. And they have come and purchased my books from me on my website or come to an event. And I've asked them all to please leave reviews and spread the word that there's a lot of love and like romance to be found, and it doesn't have to be explicit. So I've asked people, hey, if you feel comfortable leaving a review, I would love a review, and tell people what you loved about the book. I don't tell them what to say, of course. I say, if you enjoyed the book,
Yeah.
please leave your review, because I feel like word of mouth is the best way to spread the word.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Do you find that people are receptive to that personal invitation to leave a review and more likely to do so when you ask them to?
Absolutely. People say, yeah, I'll do that for you. I've just become more bold as I've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
longer. The longer I do it, the bolder I've become. I used to be kind of afraid to let people know that I love Jesus Christ because I didn't want to be canceled because I was a Christian.
Yeah.
I wanted to be, I didn't want to like put myself in a niche and like pigeonhole myself and be like, oh, she's a Christian author, I don't read Christian authors. So
Yeah.
I was kind of hush hush about my love for Jesus. But now the more people I meet, the more people I realize are like me. I've met so many people in person that when I tell them about the stories and I tell them, look, there's no spice, I mean, it's fade to gray or fade to black. And they're like, that's fine. I don't care. Like and so I've become more bold in talking about Jesus Christ, saying like, well, say I feel like it's inappropriate for me to write that way. Because some people ask like, why don't you write spice? I'm like, well, I don't feel like that's comfortable. That's not what God called me to do. And they are perfectly okay with it. I'm not preaching to them. I tell them my beliefs, period, and they accept it. So it's been really nice. I've had a really I'm pleasantly surprised at how welcoming people are, even people who are not Christian, who are paganists, because, the title of my book is The White Witch's Daughter. They immediately assume that I'm a pagan. And I'm not,
Right.
obviously. So, but we were able to have some really great conversations.
That's cool. And I think everyone experiences that doubt and fear and, what will people think of me? But I've had the same experience that there a lot of people out there have a belief in something bigger, whether they're Christian or someone else. And they totally like the answer. Sometimes I'll feel weird saying, well, I just felt like this is what I was supposed to do, or I felt the Spirit tell me to do this. And you feel like, if I say that, is someone going to think I'm crazy? And they totally understand because they've had those experiences in their life as well. And even if they maybe didn't know how to articulate it or didn't know what it was, that totally resonates. It's like, yes, that's a valid reason to make decisions and to do things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool. Have you jumped into audiobooks yet with your series?
Yes. So The White Witch's Daughter was produced by a lady, or narrated by a woman who lives in Perthshire, Scotland, which is where the books are set. Well, part of them anyway. And so that was really cool to have somebody who's from the area narrate a book. So that was really fun. And then also Winter's Handmaiden is currently being narrated by a woman who lives in Ohio or Indiana. I'm not sure. Can't remember. But it's being produced right now.
Cool. How did you find a narrator in Scotland?
I use ACX, which we can have a conversation about that if you like. It's not, so far has not been like economically good, for I hasn't,
Yeah.
I haven't reaped the benefits of it yet. But people
Yeah.
tell me, oh, just give it time, give it time. You'll like over the long run, like you'll see the trend. It will pay for itself eventually. But I just put in, I opened it for auditions, and I gave, if you're looking into audiobooks or somebody is looking into finding narrators, I mistakenly gave them just one thing to read with only two characters the first time. And so I didn't get a broad range of what the narrator could do. So if you are thinking
Yeah.
about going into audiobooks, ask the narrator who's auditioning to read multiple multiple pieces of scripts using from different characters and different perspectives, and so you can see what they can do. Not that my first narrator was bad; she did a great job, but I use ACX so far, and I am open to using other platforms. I just
Uh-huh.
haven't really had the time or desire to go and research. Like I'm busy, right? So I'm like, I'll
Yeah.
just stick with what I know. Stick with what I know and just go with that, even though there's probably more available to me and maybe at different prices. But I just stuck with what I did before because I knew what to expect and I knew it was coming. So I just
Yeah.
stayed with that. But it's an adventure in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, and ACX, for all its faults, is a place that it's full service. It connects narrators and authors. It has the audition process, the production everything is contained within it, which makes it easy to do, or maybe not easy, but less less work.
Right.
So,
Right.
and there have been other services that have tried that, and like Find Away Voices did that for a while, but then they got bought out by Spotify, and now they just do the production side. They don't do the audition side. So it's hard to, especially when you're out there trying to find someone in the world who can do this book for you. It has a lot there, but we've talked a lot about just even the Audible platform itself, and the business model for it, and like there's a lot wrong with that model, even though it's still the biggest one out there. So
Right. Yeah. And that's one everybody knows, right?
yeah, and it's interesting to me, just on the consumer side of Audible, the pay for credit. It just seems in a world of streaming, unlimited streaming for everything else, where Audible is still a points-based system. And yeah, it's just weird that you can go to Netflix and watch anything you want, but you go to Audible, you only get one or two books per month or whatever it is. It's weird that that's the way the book market is when we're so used to streaming everything else. As you're writing and going through your writing process of scenes, do you find this is an interesting topic we've talked to others about, do you find it difficult to paint to the imagery of a scene, in a way that's clean, with using clean language? You're maybe describing a battle scene or a love scene or whatever. Do you find it more difficult trying to keep it clean rather than not?
No, in fact, I am really good at description. That's one of
Mm-hmm.
my strengths. I really have a hard time with dialogue. I struggle with dialogue. I love prose. I could write prose all day. I could have a whole chapter with no talking. But when it comes to like love scenes and battle scenes, because there are a lot of battle scenes, especially in A Storm Summoned, because that's like the Battle of Stirling. It's a lot of stabby, but it's not graphic. And in fact, I'm writing right now a prequel or like a novella that's a companion piece for Winter's Handmaiden that focuses just on Arwen, who is the god of death, and how he became the god of death. Because he has an interesting story arc. He used to be a mercenary in his first life, and he was going basically to what we would call hell. And the original death gave him a choice. And so I'm writing about his story arc, and it's very stabby about his young life and how he made the wrong choices. And it's about redemption and forgiving yourself. And I have a critique group, and they're LDS women, and I gave them this scene to work over, and it was very gruesome. He was, ravishing a village, and that's one of the things that they commented on. Like, you did a really good job of painting the picture of this gory scene and not giving gruesome details. So I feel like that's a strength of mine, but
Yeah.
other people might struggle with that. But for me, that's like my favorite thing is writing description.
Yeah, we've heard the opposite from other people too. So I think you're right. I think it's an individual strength that you've been blessed with, because other people have really struggled with it that we've talked to. So that's cool. Do you have any other clean authors that you really like or that you would recommend to our listeners who are looking for clean content?
Yes. So the lady in my critique group, her name is Paige Edwards. She's actually in my stake. She writes urban, like, romance. And I've read a couple of hers, and I enjoy hers. But there's also a Christian author who does fairy tale retellings, and I really like her. I've read almost every single one of her books, and now that you bring this up, I can't remember her name. Let me look it up really quick. I have it in my Kindle. I like fairy tales. I have my whole life, and so I like to read her retellings. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
No,
It
you're
takes
fine.
a while to scroll through how many books that are
I'm
in
not
your.
telling.
Okay, I
Nice,
wasn't
Nice
sure.
try.
nice
Oh,
try.
a book that I really like, Julianne Donaldson. It's like a Regency novel. She's LDS. It's called Edenbrook. It's very good, very well done. I loved that book. That's one of, like, my go-to feel-good books that when I'm just, like, in the mood to read, like a comfort read, I pick that. I've read it probably a dozen times. I really like Julianne Donaldson. And I'm trying to find this other lady, and I can't find her. Oh, here she is. Her name is Chanda Han. Chandahahn. Chanda Han. I really like her.
Awesome. That's great. We're building not only authors that we're speaking to, but just getting your recommendations. We've hopefully helped a lot of people find new books, because that's one of the biggest issues that we're finding is just the search. How do you find these people? How do you find, especially if they're indie authors, so they may not have the big marketing effort behind them, and you have to go out and search. So thank you for those recommendations.
Have you read Charlie Holmberg?
Mm-mm.
She writes clean, and she won, I think, the ANWA Best Speculative Fiction Novel last year.
Cool.
Charlie Holmberg, she writes clean. She writes clean fantasy.
And it's amazing that, like, I consider myself an avid reader. Brock is an avid reader, yet every week we're hearing new names of people we've never heard of. Like, you can read all day, every day, and there's still hundreds, not thousands, of authors out there still to be discovered.
Every time we interview an author, I'm like, I feel guilty that I haven't read their books yet, and oftentimes it's a series or it's more, and I'm like, man, my list to read is growing up to that 200 mark and beyond.
And there's always Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah,
He
so
reads clean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and he's one of the greatest examples of that there's a marketplace for clean that goes beyond any kind of faith-based book, or it just that is loved by a wide audience worldwide. I mean, he's a master storyteller, but he's a great, if you need market proof,
Right.
He's a great one for that.
He's what we all aspire to, right? We want to be like that. But I mean, there's millions of books. There's millions of books. So like you said, like, I'm an avid reader. I read lots of books every year. Like, I'm not going to tell you how many I read a year, but I read a lot of books every year. And I'm discovering new authors all the time. And there's a lot of, now that indie game has changed everything. there are so many indie authors out there who write clean that I don't even know that they're there. Like, I don't even know that they exist until I like recommended by somebody else, word of mouth again.
Right.
Like, there's millions of books out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we're at least bringing some, and, or if not that, just that recognition and acknowledgement that they're out there. The books you're wanting to read are out there. You just have to search for them. And hopefully that improves the ability to search for them, and the ability to find them improves over time. And this effort, I hope, does that. But speaking of your to be read pile, we need to get back to our two truths and a lie. So let me remind everyone, number one, I was once interviewed by a local television network in full Harry Potter cosplay. Number two, my to be read pile is rounding the 200s. And number three, I was roped into becoming a Washington, D.C. Fox 5 GTV news anchor for a year in an effort to promote my books. So, Brock, what do you think? You tried to get a little bit out of it.
And it didn't get me anywhere. So let's see. I think number three is pretty specific. So I think that's potentially a truth. And even though you didn't give me any hint, I feel like 200 is not out of the realm of potential list as an author of things to read. So I'm going to go with number one. Maybe you were interviewed by a network while you were wearing some Harry Potter gear, but I guess it depends on how you define full cosplay dress. But I'm going to say that's the lie.
Okay, so then I will go with number three as the lie, being an anchor for a year. So
You're both wrong.
oh. So what is it, rounding thousands?
No, it's at the 100 mark. It's only
Okay.
100. Yeah, because I'm very picky about what I put on my list, because I want it to be clean, and I'm specific about what I want to read. So I am careful. So when people recommend books to me, I will go research them and say, I don't think that's for me. So
Yeah.
All right.
And I was trying to look at that rounding the 200s, and I was like, okay, she's not being specific. So I guess she could give some room for error, and that could be true. But yeah, we're off enough. Well, those are so you were a news anchor for a year promoting.
Yes, it was a total gimmick. I had this guy, a news anchor, I was at an author event, and this news anchor came and he was like, can I interview you on Fox 5? And I was like, I've made it. Yes. Because I live in like Northern Virginia, the DC area. There's like 5 million viewers, right?
Yeah.
GTV was the global television network. So the only people that watched it are like people that from Afghanistan and India. And they don't want to read my books. But they said, hey, why don't you become an anchor? Before I knew all this, they're like, hey, if you become an anchor and do a spotlight, they asked me to do a teaching moment spotlight because I'm a teacher, and I would talk about parental rights and the educational system, things like that, especially when it comes to special education. So I did a spotlight every month for a year, and I had to pay them to air it. And I never got to talk about my books.
But way to lean in on a potential opportunity, regardless of how it turned out. You were gung ho at least. So
it was a waste of money as far as marketing went, but hopefully I helped some parents out there.
Yeah, you never know.
Somebody, yeah.
Well, we stay at our score, so I didn't fall further behind, which is good. So I'll take it. But thank you so much for being on the show today. We've had a lot of fun. It's been a great conversation. We really appreciate your time and for being there. And for all of you listeners out there, please share. Like we talked about, word of mouth is so important for books. It's also for the podcast as well. So please tell your friends, tell your family, let them know that this podcast is out there and exists. And we really appreciate you listening. And we will catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.